Good afternoon. Welcome, everybody. My name is Joe Schmidt. I'm the Social Studies Specialist for the Maine Department of Education. Welcome to this online professional development hour hosted by the Maine Department of Education. Our special guest presenter today is John Raby. He is from Thornton Academy. He is here today to help us become a better searcher and find ways to better understand the resources that are available online for not only us and our students. So at this point, I will turn it over to John to further introduce himself and to get us started.
So hello, everyone. I want to take care of a few housekeeping things right off the bat. I know we're all getting used to this format and our lives are running in the background. I was joking around with Joe before we got started. My 4- and 5-year-old, I'm sure will try and break into my office at some point. I've locked the door. I've barricaded it. It's probably still not going to work. If you hear screaming in the background, ignore it. But I know your lives are still going on in the backgrounds there. So whatever you need to do, please take care of yourselves during the session. I will not be offended. Please jump in to the session wherever you want, via chat, via just raising a question. I will say, I'm going to do this kind of in 2 modes. I want to tailor it to you as teachers, but I also want to do a little bit of what I do with my students in the classroom. So some of the delivery is going to sound a lot like what I do with my kids. So it might not be as formal. The jokes will be especially bad. But I'm hoping to do that as well. So when you walk out of here or quit out of here, since you can't walk out of this room, I guess, that you'll feel like, oh yeah, I can just mimic exactly what John did with my students, no problem. I'm thrilled that I'm trying to keep up with the chat with everybody signing in. I hope that you've all seen the link to the website that I created for this. And if you haven't, please let me know right away by yelling on me right here in the chat or posting online. But I'm thrilled that we have such a range of people here, a range of educators, and not to dismiss my high school colleagues, but I'm really pumped that we've got people who work with younger students as well, because I'll talk a lot about we wait too long to teach these skills to our students. Quite frankly, as a high school teacher, when I get my kids and they have no idea about any of this, it's disappointing to me. But it's no one's fault. It's the type of thing that we just don't think about teaching our kids. So first off, at least maybe can I get a thumbs up on you've made it to the website, or a little thumbs up on the chat? Okay, we're looking good. I noticed, see, I asked the wrong question here because I asked everybody, did you graduate from college before 2000? And nobody wants to answer my question. So, but that's actually going to play into this a little bit. So I'll admit I just make the cut. But the reason I ask is it's part of our experience. So I would ask another question to follow it up. How many of you have actually used a physical card catalog at some point in your life? Yes, there we go. I remember going to the library as a kid, pulling open those drawers. I can remember the smell of it, flipping through all those cards, trying to find the information. But any of our students now, our high school students, our elementary school students, if you talk about a card catalog, they are going to have no idea what you're talking about. You can show them a picture of a library from 30 years ago and they say, what is that big thing in the corner over there? Why is it there? It's just wasting space. There should be a bank of computers there or something. But that plays an important role in terms of how we access information. And we don't have something to mimic that. So to start, I'm going to try and jump over and present my screen on my iPad here. So I apologize for, or actually, wait a moment. Let me see how you're doing. Okay, we're not there yet. So I've got another activity if you haven't scrolled down on our website, but let me take you to that here. Boom. All right, and so if you scroll down a little bit, I'd like to hear from you. How do you know when you have a reliable source? So if you're doing some research right now, specifically on the internet, how do you know when the source that you've got is quality? What are you looking for? And I'm using a tool here called Padlet. So if you've used it before, you're ready to roll with that. But when you click on the link that's right there in that bold blue, our Padlet, so make everybody a little seasick zooming out, in and out, you're going to come to a screen that looks like this. This is my screen, keeps up with me. In that bottom right-hand corner, you've got that pink dot with a white plus sign. If you tap on that, it's going to bring up a dialog box for you, and you're going to be able to post. At this time, I'm not allowing you to see everybody else's answers. No cheating in this class. But I want to know, so I'm sending you to research something on the internet. What are you going to look for to make sure that you know it's a quality source? Give you a minute or two to think about that. I'm going to watch you in the background. And then we'll see what you've come up with. And we'll talk about those responses. So take a minute or two with that, and then we'll chat about it. Send me a chat or something if you can't access it, if it's not working for you. Ooh, Cindy, the plus sign isn't working for you. All right, let me get in there and see what I can do about that. Let's see if you end up being the only one or. Ooh. Cindy, did you happen to open it up in a Padlet app or on another page? And well, at least I can see in the background it's working for some people as I have my first tech fail here. So Cindy and Norma, can you tell me where you're opening up this link? Are you just opening it up in a website or?
I opened it up on your, wait a minute.
Okay.
Okay, where did you want us to open it again? Without the plus sign?
Sometimes if you just, I've had students who have used it and there's a Padlet app, and if it gets opened up in that, it doesn't behave as well. So what device are you using right now?
A MacBook.
Okay. If you try opening the link up in a new tab,
Okay.
give that a shot and see what that does for us.
I can't get to a new tab without closing you.
Oh, okay. If you control click on the link, there should be an option.
Okay. Window, no, that's not working either.
Luckily, this at least isn't mission critical.
Oh, no luck.
These are great answers. Give you folks maybe about 30 more seconds, then I'm going to start approving your answers so you can see what everybody has put down and start trading notes. Can everyone hear my children screaming in the background? Perfect. They're doing their job. A sudden thud you hear will be one of them crashing into the door. Okay, let's start approving some of these and take a look at them together and what we've got. And actually, I can just. So hopefully that's coming up for you. Now, as you read through your colleagues' posts here, I want you to think about as well, and these are great ideas, but would your students answer in the same way? And if you want to see what some students put down, this is an activity that I did with my students. And I'll jump quickly out of here. Let's see if it keeps up with me. Sorry, I got to navigate all my windows here. Come on back. There you are. If we scroll down on the website a little bit, thank folks for not peeking. I included 2 classes worth of posts on this topic. These were high school sophomores this past fall, so you get an idea of what they put down. And I think if you look at our responses, you're going to see some different ideas. So some of you won't even want to remain anonymous, but I like this idea of double checking a commonly known source like a National Geographic or museums, getting rid of social media as news sources, looking at the website address. All right, leaning towards .gov and .edu, and we've got our go-tos for news and BBC and NPR. But there's some ideas here that are posted that I also don't know if they're totally clear. So for example, and especially if you think about your students and where they're going to get their resources from. So when was it written? Was the person there? What are the sources' biases? Now, if we walked into a library, we know the source. Especially if we pull a book off the shelf, the source is right there. We know who created it. But oftentimes, especially if we think about our students, they're not going to know who created the source. The website doesn't have to put down the author. There's no way we're going to be able to determine the bias of the source. The data source was published. We might not have that either. So for all those of us who grew up with those card catalogs and had all that information literally at our fingertips, all of a sudden it's disappeared now with the internet, especially with the sources our students choose. I think if we're honest with ourselves, when our students answer this, it's, well, I know it's good because Google gave it to me. Or, how far do you go in a Google search? Well, whatever's on that first screen. And so if they've got a computer, great, they get a few results. If they've got a mobile device, it's even less. But they're not going to scroll down. God forbid they go onto the second page of results. And so when you talk about, well, my students will comment, I use it if it looks reliable. And then the follow-up to that is, well, how do you know it's reliable? And that's where you get the dead silence in response. They have no idea how to test that out. And in fairness to our kids, it's not just our students. And I want to give you a few examples to think about. And truly right now, I feel like I'm exaggerating, but I also don't feel I am, because it's life and death. And so there are 2 examples I'd like to give you. One was from my father, who was a longtime history teacher. And I got an email to him that I think he sent to everybody in his address book. And it spelled out in no uncertain terms how to make sure you did not get the coronavirus. And it was this whole thing about holding your breath and drinking water on a consistent basis. And if you did that, you were good to go. All right. Stanford doctors. Perfect. And he sent it out. And I replied all and said, Dad, this is fake, and included a link to everybody. I don't think he was particularly thrilled by that, but we got into this long conversation. It says Stanford there. And I apologize. This is where might get a little vulgar here with this, but fine, Dad, it says Stanford. All right. But I make the website that I've directed you to, I use that every day with my students. I said, I've got a website. So I can write in there, you know what? If you don't have a bowel movement during this whole coronavirus thing, the New England Journal of Medicine ensures that you will not get coronavirus. And he said, well, that's obviously fake. And he said, yeah, but there's nothing to stop me from writing that. And that's the same thing with your Stanford bit. So he dug into it, and I got an email a few days later and said, you were right. Now, let's see, it was either just proceeding when my school shut down around St. Patrick's Day or just after. This is where I really took my life into my own hands. My mother-in-law called and informed us that she had gotten a message from her older brother. And full disclosure, her older brother used to work for FEMA. And she was informed the president is going to announce within 48 hours that we are going into lockdown as a country. No in or out. Everybody's stuck at their homes. And she was insisting, we got to protect the grandkids. Get out there, get your groceries. It's time to go into panic mode. Let's go, let's go, let's go. And my wife and I are on the phone with her, and I'm bringing up sources, including one from Reuters. This is one of the big tricks out there right now on the internet. And my wife's going, Mom, I don't know if this is right. Keep in mind, I am taking on my mother-in-law in front of my wife. This is dangerous stuff. And a degree away, her older brother. This was a bad move on my part in the family. But here we are in no lockdown. And my mother-in-law is a former principal, the main two very smart people who got totally duped by what's on the internet. And I think we'd like to all put ourselves out there and say, I know what I'm doing. I'm fine. But the fact of the matter is, everybody gets tricked at one point or another, especially if we're not doing everything that we're supposed to. I'm going to refer you to a book by Sam Weinberg later on, and he talks about, in this book, a fourth grade history textbook in Virginia. And in it, the students are told that African-American slaves were signing up to fight for the Confederacy under Stonewall Jackson. And Weinberg goes on to all his research. Well, Jackson was killed by friendly fire in 1863, so this would have been had early in the war, and goes into all this. So basically, the slaves were fighting to keep themselves enslaved. So that just doesn't make any sense. Yet this is in a Virginia textbook for fourth graders. And the Washington Post, Weinberg goes into this in the introduction of his book, the Washington Post did an investigation of this and contacted the publisher, and the publisher provided the sources that the author used, and lo and behold, it was something off the internet from a group that was sympathetic to the Confederacy. So this is all out there, and it's something we get tripped up by all the time. So we need to know a little bit of what to do. So to start, I want to talk to you about reading a URL and making sure when we open up a website and there's this massive gobbledygook of letters, what does that mean? So it's pop quiz time. And you can speak up via the chat or out loud if you're daring. But I'm going to post a few elements here of URLs, and I want to know, what do they mean when you see them? So for example, when you have a website that ends in .com, what does that mean? What does that tell you about the website?
You want us to chime in?
Yeah, absolutely. If you know what it means.
It's a commercial site,
Okay, so what does that mean though? If it's a commercial
paid.
site?
Paid sponsorship.
Okay. Come on, let's see if my pencil will work doing this. There we go. Or they simply might be trying to sell you something. So there's some money behind it. You've already talked about bias, so that's going to give us a big hint to that. .org.
Typically nonprofits, but not always.
Not, Gina, nonprofit's the key there. That's what you're looking for. You know, and your students will say, it means organization. Yes. But what does being an organization mean? They don't know that element to it. How about .edu?
It's an educational institution, correct? Or owned by?
That's a start, but for example, I work at Thornton Academy, and it's thorntonacademy.org, and it's not thorntonacademy.edu. So my follow-up question is, why not edu?
No.
As a student, you can have an EDU ending as well.
Edu, pencil back. My pencil keeps quitting out on me. Whoops. Edu is typically higher education. And we may see some things connected with the UMaine system in this state, for example, that filters down, but you're really looking at colleges and universities there. .gov.
That's the government generally, isn't it?
It is. Yep.
Federal government.
So I guess depending upon your leanings, and some of you mentioned this in our Padlet, this is either very reliable or it's always lying to you. Let's make it a little harder though. How about FR?
I'm not familiar with that one at all.
Isn't that when it comes from a different country?
It could be.
Okay.
You want to take a guess, Brie?
It's not France. I mean,
It is France.
oh, then it is. Okay. Yay. I feel like I'm in school. Thank you for that moment.
And let me add on to that, because that's a great point. I don't know everything about this. And if somebody tells you that they do, they're lying. There's too much of it. It's moving too fast.
Yeah.
So as soon as somebody tells you, oh yeah, I can take you through all this, I got it. They don't know. .ca?
Canada?
Yes. Websites are just a little funnier than the ones in the US. No laughter. .iq.
Is it Iraq?
It is Iraq.
Cool.
That was a wild guess.
That's okay. Let's encourage that risk taking. Nothing wrong with that. How about .uk?
Gee, I wonder. United Kingdom.
Okay, okay. I'm glad to see the confidence here.
It's coming.
It is. .za. My time isn't up already. Was that what the bell was for?
That's our grandfather clock. Sorry.
It's perfectly all right. I'm trying to make bad jokes here. Don't stop me. Not as much confidence on this one.
No, I've seen it before though. I feel like it's South Africa.
Oh,
No?
it is.
I studied abroad in Namibia, next door.
You took all my fun away.
Really? Sorry.
It's okay, because you're going to steal this and you're going to use it with your students, and they're going to
Yeah.
guess all these countries with Z's. And while, yes, usually you can figure it out from the letter combinations used.
Or it's related to pizza. I mean, that's a good guess too.
I have not heard that one from students. That's good. I like that. I'm going to use that. Eventually, you run out of letter combinations. They've got to come up with something different.
Yeah.
So this is one I love tossing in for kids, because it's just that moment of, hey, you don't know it. But if you go and look up country codes on the internet, you'll get a long list of them. So if you want that, well, maybe not, I don't know how much they're exporting right now, but if you want that nice pair of Italian leather shoes, you might zero in on a website that ends in .it.com. But those are all tools that you can use, not only to decode what's going on a website, but to search on it, to search for things as well. And we'll get to that as well. If you see a backslash on a website, what does that mean? Then I'll put it up here in a different color.
It's usually getting more particular, isn't it?
That could be one way to define it, yeah. And here, let me do this to help you. If you look at that URL in bold on the website that I just brought up, that's actually the URL for, well, I'm giving it away here. It's the URL for where we are today.
So it's giving us a more specific breakdown of what's, you've got the main website, but then it's taking you to a specific part of that website.
Yeah, it's kind of sub-levels to it. So I think about a college or university. So you could have, I don't know, let's pick a random university like the University of Wisconsin. So you might have wisconsin.edu/academics/ and then every academic department that falls in there. And then after each one, you could have a backslash for courses or backslash faculty. It's just different levels to that website. So
Right. Admissions, financial aid, etc.
Yeah. So you're just digging deeper into a website, but you know that core of it, for example, rabyclasses.weebly.com, that's the home to all of it. So you can see, because you may stumble on a website that has a URL like that with tons of backslashes, that when you're on that specific page, it may not be totally evident who's hosting it. But again, you just take a few steps back in that URL, and now you've got a much better idea of who's in charge of it. Let's go back here. There we go. Screen's keeping up with me. And this little squiggly line. Now I've got you.
In Spanish, that would be a tilde, but that can't work in the internet.
Well, that is the symbol we're hitting. So in terms of
Okay.
naming it, that's absolutely correct. But my question is, what does that mean? If somebody tosses a tilde into a URL, what does it tell us?
I'm gonna guess that it changes something, because if you put a tilde over an N, it changes the sound of the end. So maybe it changes things somehow.
It does change things. So for example, I'm going to start writing a URL up here, and feel free to chime in. What can you tell me about this URL so far?
And it's hosted by Northwestern.
So we've got Northwestern University. So I think for a lot of us, it might feel like a reputable source right off the bat. Now, even if you have no idea what PubWeb means, what do you now know we've done on Northwestern's website?
You've clicked on something.
We've dug in a level.
Yeah.
So PubWeb in this case was public web.
Okay.
Hmm. Could be an individual.
It means that's an individual's website. That's their website. So even though in this case, it's being hosted by northwestern.edu, this was their public web domain. And if you get that tilde, now we know that this website belongs to A. Butts. A. Butts was a professor at Northwestern. And if you get into teaching either digital literacy, web literacy, this is a classic example because, this is great to use with your students because they don't know the term, but Professor Butts produced a work of Holocaust revisionism. Now, with this group, I'll expect everybody knows exactly what that means right off the bat. So what department is he in?
History.
Engineering.
Oh.
So if you jump right to .edu, you might think, oh, this is great. It's going to be a reliable resource. Except I know I've taught my students, if you see that tilde, if you can't determine who the author is, if you don't know who that person is, get out of there. It's not worth using. And that's an awful example of it. But I've also had students do research. They've come across the tilde. I remember it was my freshman doing a project on world religions. They found the website. They came to me with it. They said, we've got this website. Can we use it? I said, well, who is it? It's a professor of religion. Said, that sounds pretty good to me. You've got an expert in the field. I would trust that a little bit more. Maybe not entirely, but it's worth trusting. This website caused huge problems for Northwestern because he had tenure and they couldn't single out his website compared to everybody else's because it became a First Amendment issue. So they got stuck either getting rid of his one website or kicking everybody off. And I will admit, I've forgotten how they resolved it. So, oh my goodness, I am burning through the time here already. So, let me keep you folks going here. So those are all elements just simply by looking at the URL to use. Now, here's an example that I used at the start of the school year, which now feels a lot more serious. So, but I told my students, my children, again, they're 4 and 5, my boys are homesick, and I've been working on trying to find reliable information for them, and I needed my students' help. So I wanted to know, should I use the American College of Pediatricians site or the American Academy of Pediatrics site? Now, because I got to keep an eye on the time here, I can't put you through this, but how would you find out about which one of these sites is the one I should use? What would you do?
John, I do not have a 3:30. If you're worried about time, as long as people are willing to stay,
Okay.
I don't want you to feel like you have to rush. If the audience feels it's worthwhile, I would continue taking them through the paces. For anybody that may have to leave for another commitment, I know there's always some of those. I will drop in your feedback form shortly if you do feel like you have to run. But John, feel free to continue doing what you're doing as long as the group seems to be engaged with it. So.
Okay, I got the Joe Schmidt stamp of approval, so here we go. So which website should I use? Who should I use? The American College of Pediatricians or the American Academy of Pediatrics? Have at it. Yeah, Bree, I certainly understand you need to leave. my school is hosting a meeting, but you know what? I'm looking forward to being able to say, sorry, couldn't make it. I already filled out my excuse form.
Love that. I know Chris in Hope Hall.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yep.
Um,
Yeah.
we have a Bowdoin connection, and I love her goat farm.
Chris is my Wesleyan connection.
Oh, I didn't know he went to Wesleyan.
So I can't embarrass him too much, but he went to school with some of my teachers. Hey, my kids are coughing in the background. I need your help, folks.
What were the two choices again?
We've got, if you look at the website, it's under this My Family Needs Your Help section. And we've got the American College of Pediatricians or the American Academy of Pediatrics.
I'd go American Academy.
Do you have a reason why?
I looked it up.
Oh, my reason was just because American College of Pediatricians is probably college related, whereas the American Academy of Pediatrics is probably more information from pediatricians, just a guess.
But you're telling me probably,
College
and you raise the
Academy.
tone of your voice, which tells me you're not sure. And
No,
my
absolutely
kids'
not.
lives are hanging in the balance. This is not fair.
I
I'm
Googled
counting on you to save my children's lives.
I Googled American College of Pediatricians, and it says that it's like a conservative think tank.
Oh, wow.
So Oh.
On the bottom, American College of Pediatrics, it also says this website is intended for educational purposes only and not intended to be for individual professional medical care.
Personally,
Any other thoughts?
I'd go to my insurance site because they actually have questions that you can ask. I mean, that you can actually ask a medical professional a question.
Fair enough, but I'm being mean and I'm not giving you that choice.
The American Academy has clinical support like Pediatric Online. So maybe you can talk to individuals on that website.
Okay. Cindy, I like to spends more money on professional publications and continuing education from the American Academy. Okay.
I might look up what my family's pediatrician's credentials are, see what he was a member of, and then since I already trust him,
Yep.
then I would use the whatever institution that his degree or he's affiliated with.
Okay. Sounds good. Sounds good. Let me jump back to some of your ideas from earlier. And we're so we're looking at, for example, what are these what are the extensions? That's our .org, our .gov, our .com, .edu. So if you come across two websites on the same topic, .org or .com, which one's better?
.org.
They're not trying to sell you something. So, for example, martinlutherking.org. And if you look it up, the tagline down at the bottom says a great site for students and teachers alike. I think it's dropped a little bit in the results, but it used to show up in the top 5. But not-for-profit organization, right? Now, there may be some good .coms out there, but let's take somebody who's not trying to make something from this, right? Because there are lots of good nonprofit organizations out there. Like, for example, the KKK, which is the group that runs martinlutherking.org. Yes,
Well,
that's the appropriate action. It's a hate site. You know, there are flyers to download and pass out at school, which will probably get you kicked out. You know, there are rap lyrics, there a quiz for the kids. It's very appealing to the kids, but it's not the type of information that you would want your students to use. And if you think that your students won't fall for that, or they tell you they won't, I've had kids fall for that. They brought it in as, this is my resource on Dr. King. Tell them, no, it's not. So we can't simply rely on a URL. Okay, martinlutherking.org versus britannica.com. In that case, britannica.com is probably better. pbs.org, probably better. But let's get into some tools to figure out what's going on behind a website. So let's see, for a example here, if you'll bear with me typing everything in. All right, American College of Pediatricians. So we get some information there. I've got their URL right up at the top. This is, we're going to start doing something called thinking laterally. Now, Google has all sorts of tools embedded in it that we never pay attention to. If you're old enough, use those card catalogs. We had those gatekeepers to information, those librarians who stood at the door and steered us in the right direction. No librarian was going to put down the New York Times next to the National Enquirer and say they're equal. But the internet does that. And we as a group of educators have not spent the time to educate our students what the new tools are. So we're going to do something called a negative site search. So to start, I'm going to search for the American College of Pediatricians, but I'm going to use their URL. I'm not going to use just their name. So let's see, I've got ACE, I think it was .org. And if you notice in some of the search suggestions that are coming up here, well, the third one down says bias. That might be an alarm bell right away. But here's what I'm gonna do next. Let's see if I can make this bigger for you. This is where Google gets a little picky. So, and you can do this with just about any website. So, is anyone familiar with a negative search? Okay, so let's say I'm thinking about the fall, I'm putting back in school, and I'm also thinking about apple picking. But if I search for apple, what am I going to get in my search results?
Every Apple product under the sun.
Yeah, well, and it could be apple pies and apple sauce, but
That
there are
too.
probably going to be some computers and mobile devices tossed in there as well. So I don't want that. So if I put in a minus sign, that's telling Google, all right, I want you to take a search term and get rid of it, eliminate it from what I'm doing. So if I'm looking to pick apples, I could put in apple minus computers, and it'll get rid of every website that mentions computers from my search. So immediately I can start to get better results. Right? It's a really simple tool that not many people know about. Now, what I'm going to add to this is another tool that Google has. So for example, I'm going to type in site, S-I-T-E, and then a colon. Now, I'm combining a negative search and a site search here. So I'm using two tools and I'm smashing together. I can do a site search all on its own. What a site search does in Google is it limits the results to the URL that you put in. So I'm not a Wisconsin boy. I grew up in New Jersey, so I was born and raised on the New York Times. I referred to that earlier. So if I find an article in the New York Times, but I can't remember where it was, but I know it's there, I can search for the topic and then add site, colon, nytimes.com, and every result that I get is going to be from the New York Times. So it'll immediately push the results you want to the top. What I'm doing here, though, is I'm going to tell Google, I want to learn about the American College of Pediatricians, but I don't want to know what they say about themselves, because they probably got a little different opinion about themselves than everybody else. Let's see what happens. Now, you look at that first result, splcenter.org. Even if you don't know that's the Southern Poverty Law Center, we dig deep into it, fighting hate extremist files. For everyone now, alarm bells should be going off.
Yeah.
And this was a very simple search. We keep going. We got Wikipedia's page. I could talk to you about Wikipedia, but we won't fall down that rabbit hole. Maybe I'm going to use it. Maybe I'm not. Wikipedia, I'll say this one thing. It's great for sources. Skip the article, scroll down to all the resources down at the bottom. Basically use their bibliography. We keep going down. American College of Pediatricians, media bias fact check. Alarm bells should start going off for all of us, our students included, hopefully, if there's something that doesn't seem right about this website. And this is a great way to get into, okay, what do people say about this? If you go farther down, you've got Snopes, a fact-checking organization. They're, without even looking into this, without clicking on any of the links, you can start to get a feeling of something's not quite right here. This is a fantastic tool to use. I describe it to my students, you don't like necessarily being judged for who you hang out with, but who you can hang out with tells you sometimes a little bit about who you are. This is a way to find out who's hanging out with these websites, who's hanging out with these organizations, who's linking to them. Did how I do that make sense?
Yes.
You can also use a website, and there are a number of these. And let me preface this by saying none of these is foolproof. I'm going to give you a bunch of tools in the hopes that some will work, but they don't always work. Whois.net is a domain search. So for example, if you type in a URL, so I'll use martinlutherking.org here and allow it to run its search. And I will admit, the results for this are a mess. And there's a lot of tech that I'm proud to say, I have no idea what it means. I can't tell you a thing about it. But I can dig down here and say, oh, well, there's this guy, Don Black, who works for Stormfront out of Palm Beach, Florida. He's got a phone number. I've had colleagues teach this, and the kids have called the phone number. Don't do that. There's an email address as well. But the email address ends in stormfront.org. Maybe we find out what stormfront.org is. I'm not going to plug it in right now because I don't particularly want to see it. But really quick and simple way to figure out, okay, what's going on this website? Who's really behind it? Because Don Black is not out there on the first page of that site saying, hi, it's me. He is well hidden. And there are horrible websites like that. There are some that are more fun. Like, let's see. If we have environmentalists out there. The Pacific Northwest tree octopus. It needs saving. And I see some people laughing and chuckling and going, that's not real. But tell that to the people who have donated thousands of dollars to this website.
Oh, man.
I know we're all leaning towards the social studies side here, but there's another side there. It's a global killer. Forget about coronavirus. Dihydrogen monoxide. It's going to wipe us out. Anybody heard of dihydrogen monoxide?
Is that the anti-malaria stuff?
Nope.
Nope. Oh,
I know, it's water.
See me. Just got the window open. It's water, yes. But they set up this great website. It looks like it's a government website, and it basically tells you water is going to kill everyone. And there are students who have given presentations on this with their science teachers laughing in the background. So it happens. Another cool tool. And
I
these
jump
are
in real. The dihydrogen monoxide is one of my favorite go-to. I've done the tree octopus one as well. But what's really good about the dihydrogen monoxide one is that if you do your basic like checks of when was it updated, how was, like, as the tech website aspect of it, it is 100% kept up to date to meet all of those standards of what you would look for. So you actually have to do that next thinking level piece, because people have died from consuming too much H2O. People have been killed by H2O, right? Those things happen, and they frame it in such a wonderfully brilliant way that you do have to really think about the information. So thank you, John, for sharing that. That's one of my favorites.
I have a question.
yes.
So you're showing us how you can do it in Google. Can Bing or other search engines, can you do the negative site or whatever, the same tools?
I will admit I suffer from a heavy case of Googleitis.
Okay.
You know, Google gives it to me. I get down and I bow down to it and say thank you, and I move on. So I'm not 100% sure, but let me see what I can find out. I would imagine so. For example, Bing, their algorithm is pretty darn close to Google's.
Okay.
They're not messing around too much, but that's another great point. And your students may be shocked that there are other search engines out there, but the algorithms are slightly different. So if you put up a Google next to a Bing, next to a Yahoo, your students will get different results from each of those search engines. And they can even, depending upon their own search history and who's paying attention to them, they can even get different results themselves sitting next to each other in class. They might get different results if they're sitting in class versus if they're sitting at home. If they're sitting in class and they're researching something for our history class, let's say on Egypt, and Google sees, ooh, this IP address is coming from a school. I bet they want to do research. So I'm going to pump those results at them. But they go home and maybe it's nearing a vacation. Imagine that. And I think, oh, this person might like plane tickets. And they get a totally different set of results. So I admit I have not been able to make that work myself, but I have seen videos of people doing it.
Okay, thank you.
So however much that can be trusted. This next website, archive.org, and these are linked on that site that I gave you. So if you're furiously trying to keep track of everything, allow yourself to calm down a little bit. But the Wayback Machine takes images of websites. I'm going to be redundant here, going way back. So, and it's fun just for giggles to see what websites used to look like. Like you can type in google.com and see what the first Google website looked like, or see what amazon.com looked like when it first broke ground. But as a history teacher, it's great. For example, and I'll refer to them again, if I want to see how the New York Times covered September 11th, 2001, let's plug nytimes.com in there. And this calendar that you see is all sorts of snapshots of the New York Times website. So I could tap on 2011 and take myself to, or not 2011, sorry, 2001. There goes my history. They don't have September 1st, but here's September 2nd. So you may not get exactly what you want, but now I'm messing up. Now I'm doing September 1st. This is embarrassing as a history teacher to get my dates wrong here. Here we go. A lot more snapshots. There we go. And so now you can see exactly how it was being reported on at the time. And the great thing is a lot of these links will still work as well. So certainly as a history teacher, this is great for primary sources. Let me take you through what else I've got. Are there any questions, by the way, this time? I've been trying to jump back and forth between things. So we've looked at advanced search tools and reading laterally. I've got some other resources for you that would be worthwhile if the screen keeps up with me. Civic Online Reasoning is a great new website put out by Sam Weinberg out of Stanford University. And he's got a great book, Why Learn History When It's Already on Your Phone. I highly recommend checking that out. But if you don't want to have to invent your own lessons on this, by all means, steal mine. But Weinberg and his cohorts there also have a ton of lessons already set up. Web Literacy for Student Fact Checkers is a great book. It's online, totally for free, written by a guy named Mike Caulfield, who did some work with Weinberg. And it's got tons of information on this. A lot of what I taught you today was straight out of that book, and a lot of the activities are in there as well. He's got activities that are really geared for our kids. So I would recommend checking that out as a resource. The News Literacy Project, along the same lines as Civic Online Reasoning, another good site to check out if you're looking to teach your students how to evaluate websites. If you're teaching about the news, All Sides is a fantastic piece. I know we've talked about reliability here, but bias is an element to it. All Sides is a great site that presents the same issue from multiple points of view. So I'm going to jump around a little bit if I can. I put in some other activities I do with my kids. Here's one on sponsored content, but
John, real quick before you leave that page, he talked about, I'm also a big fan of Why Learn History when it's already on your phone. And if you're on my listserv this morning, just to highlight, I'm considering doing like a book study just to change up a different way to work with each other and learn, and asking if people are interested. There's been 23 responses so far, and 20 people have said they're interested, and this is one of the book options. The negative, just to be clear on it, is I do not have a way of getting everybody booked. So you'd be responsible for ordering a book, getting it delivered to your house. But if you want to learn more about this, let me know or check out the survey and pick this as a book you'd like to learn more about. So it's an option.
it's a great choice. Mine is stuck on my desk at school right now. Back to that All Sides piece. So I do this activity with my students. What grizzly bear do they want to take home? And they have a choice. And some of my students are still bugging me because I have not provided them with their grizzly bear yet. But usually, not always, sometimes they have some interesting reasons, but usually the majority of my students choose this combination. It's cute. How heartful can the baby be? Some kids are scared of the mother, but you know, in the middle here, you've got the one with the deep black eyes. Like, that one is coming to get you. It might be on something. And then you've got your run-of-the-mill grizzly bear there on the right. As my students examine media bias, we take a look at some articles on grizzly bears. And those images that are posted there for my students are the images from 3 different articles. And they had 3 very different perspectives on whether or not grizzly bears should still be protected as endangered species. It may not be difficult to guess which picture was used by the article that said they should be protected.
The one with the baby.
Yeah. This is a fun activity. There are 3 events there: a pig rescuing a baby goat at a kind of a petting zoo, a woman who set herself on fire twerking, and then a pillow fight. Oh, I should have capitalized point there. A pillow fight at West Point that became weaponized. One of those is actually a real news story. And it's fun having my students try and guess which one it is. They usually go for the woman who set herself on fire because they've seen it. They know it's true, except it's not. I'll leave you to try and figure out which one is the real one. I've got a graphic here on bias in the news. This is a nice lead into all sides and getting kids thinking about what's reliable. This is a tough topic to teach kids because they've had that instant gratification of Google, and so have we for that matter. I can't blame our students entirely, but they've had that instant gratification of Google ingrained in them. And so why should I bother doing this extra step? But it takes a while, but after months, my students are now used to, if they come to me in class and they want to talk about a current event and they say, I saw this on the news, they know they're getting from me, where? It was on the internet. Well, great, because there are only 3 or 4 sites on the internet, so we should be able to narrow down where you found this pretty quickly. And now they know, sometimes they'll forget to say it, but they've got it now. It's like, oh, nope, I got it here. I got it here, and they'll have the article up on their iPads. And those are the type of information consumers we want to develop. So it was easy years ago when we had the gatekeepers as librarians and they were taking care of us. It doesn't exist anymore. And so this needs to be taught everywhere and at a young age. As soon as kids are starting to do research, they should be looking into this.
I have a question on what age. I do K through 5. I'm the librarian for all of them. And I'm not sure what's a good level for the different grades of what they can handle. And I'm a first year teacher, so I'm making a lot of stuff up as I go.
Well, I've been teaching for longer and I'm still making it up, so don't feel bad.
Okay.
And my oldest is a kindergartner, so I'm figuring a lot out about kindergarten right now this year too. I don't know. There's an element for me of, if our students are doing research, they need to have these tools. So for example, if I think about the first time I was taken to the library as a student at some point during elementary school, they weren't waiting to show us the card catalog and how to find a book and how to check it out. At the same time, I don't think I would start off with, here's martinlutherking.org. Let's talk about this website. So it may be simply showing them some of the search tools that they can use and getting it ingrained right from the start. You don't just type in a random search. You put some thought into what you're typing into that search bar, and you use some of these tools. So we showed you a negative search. So do a site search. There's something called a phrase search, where if you put something in quotes, it'll search for that exact line as opposed to just searching for all the words that you typed in. That's a great way to narrow down results. Your students hear a song, they really like it, but they have no idea what it is. Well, they've probably heard the chorus and it's stuck in their heads. Put that in quotes, they're going to get the lyrics to that song. Those types of tools, I would say yes.
Okay.
As if they're being brought to the library, or their teacher is giving them a topic that they need to go on the internet and do research for, then they should start to be introduced to these tools. Maybe not all the pitfalls, maybe not all the evil, but I would say absolutely as soon as they start doing it.
That's probably about 3rd grade in our school. They might be doing other things earlier, but I think because of spelling, we're not teaching them how to use the online catalog until 3rd grade because we're using Alexandria, and it's just, if you spell something wrong, it's just very frustrating for everybody involved. So we're kind of waiting till 3rd grade. If we upgrade to a different or switch to a different cataloging system, we might be able to teach it earlier. But right now and then the teachers are usually just giving certain websites that they can only go on.
Yeah, so you've got that control. At the same time, maybe another way to think about it is you walk into a library years ago and you knew where the fiction section was and you knew where the nonfiction was. It would also maybe starting with, here's how you read a URL. Just so, if we think about that call number on the spine of a book, being able to decode that and being taught that, giving them those same tools. And I think reading the URL is a good mirror to that.
It's a good idea. Thanks.
Okay.
I already teach them call numbers, so that's a good way to do it.
Yeah, I think that's an excellent mimic of that. So I think I have covered everything I've got, and I'm happy to stick around and take questions. And it's everything. I'm realizing you haven't seen my face probably much at all at this. My email is at the top of the website, as well as my Twitter handle. Twitter is a great resource, as much as it may seem tech geeky, and I am a tech geek. It's a great resource for connecting with other educators. It's usually how Joe and I communicate, for example. And there are tons of people who want to teach not only this, but everything else. If you got a question, this is a great way. Twitter's a great way to go about contacting people about it.
Does anybody have any follow-up questions for John before I hit the end of the record button? I always like to try to capture the very specific, relevant questions.
And feel free to use that contact information in the future. You can make the joke right now. I'm not going anywhere. I'm spend most of my time in this room that you're seeing. So
And this was very helpful. Thank you.
thank you. Thank you for coming.
Any questions for John?
So, John, would it be okay to contact you in the future when I might come across a questionable resource? Like, is this biased? Can I trust this? I've done my checks. I'm still confused by it. We can run that.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank
I'd
you.
be happy to help. So, if it helps, hopefully when we get back into the classroom, it gets harder with our bell schedules and the like, but if I'm happy to present to folks as well. So, or if you need me to rehearse something with you, I'm happy to.
Thank you.
So, this is one of my pet topics. I think this is really important for us as teachers to know and to be teaching our students about.
Yeah, it was very enlightening. Thank you. Some of the things that you presented are things that really were surprising to me. You think you know what you hope you hope you've learned through experience, but this was still even above and beyond that. So thank you.
Thank you.